cell.
Lipid bilayer.
Lipid bilayer. Fat to fat. And it let it through. That makes sense. But now, my water soluble gets to its target cell. It encounters that lipid bilayer. Do water and fats mix? No. So what do you see embedded into the plasma membrane for that water-soluble chemical?
A signal receptor.
A signal receptor. Now, we'll also have a receptor on the fat-soluble one, but this time we've got to have a protein embedded. Notice how the fat-soluble one isn't passing by way of a protein, but the water-soluble one is. Okay? Now, what does this mean? Okay. The goal of a hormone, when it reaches its target cell, is to do what to it? Which means, if the only product a cell can make is protein, it's affecting the product being made. Okay? Is everybody with me on that? So, now, what they're trying to show me, my nucleus. My nucleus. What is the membrane of the nucleus made up of? They're trying to show it. What? The membrane. What is the membrane of the nucleus? It's the exact same thing as the plasma membrane. It's a lipid bilayer. Does everybody remember that? So now, for the fat soluble, what does that, not only now on the fat soluble one, has that actual chemical made it through the plasma membrane, it has made it through the plasma membrane of my nucleus, and that means it gets to encounter what? What is located, what is kept in my nucleus? What material? My DNA. My DNA contains what? Oh. If this is my DNA strand, I've got them located all the way down my DNA strand. They're called our genes. Genes code for what? A protein. That's the only thing they can make. So now, if this fat soluble has made it through the plasma membrane here, made it through the plasma membrane, it gets to go directly to the gene of the DNA, making a protein for this cell, and say, do something different. Come in here, affect that DNA, affect that gene, and affect that product. Yes, no, maybe. Water soluble. Water soluble had to have a protein embedded that had a shape that this chemical could fit into, specificity, all right? When it attached, it sets off a series of reactions in that protein. This protein, I'm not sure if you guys remember the little 3 protein complex. It was called the G protein complex. That last one gets kind of excited. Ah! We're active. Let's go do something. All right? So it'll activate, go through some little processes out here in the cytoplasm, and the little protein that's getting made from the DNA, all right, it'll go to it and go, halt, stop. You got, no, can't bend that way, you got to bend this way. Affects that protein, and we've now affected the product. What did y'all just learn? Juliet?
So fat soluble affects the genes directly in the more soluble protein.
Yes! Yes! OMG, yes! Yes! That's what I just told you. Excellent.
So, what's an example of like protein that's water soluble? I'm sorry.
We go back to our 3 classes.
Okay.
These right here would be the ones that are lipid-based, okay? Sex steroids, the corticos, calcitriol. These would be ones who are looking at water-based. And this right here is their mode of action and how they're going to be transported in the blood. Juliet?
So it can't change the genes, right? So does it just tell which protein should be?
Okay, so let's think about this for a second, okay? If since a lipid-based, okay, is the one that's going to make its way to the actual gene on a chromosome. And an example of those are the sex steroids, okay? Probably the more easier one to think about is with ovaries, okay? So, in an ovary, which I think we kind of talked about this, okay? If you remember, you have cells throughout the ovary, but those cells have to go through meiosis. Believe it or not, they start out immature, okay? They actually have to begin to develop. What is the product of an ovary?
Egg.
An egg, okay? So our product, that oocyte, is an egg, okay? But to get to that point, the ovaries, they have to secrete hormones, estrogen, all right? Do you guys remember how for the sex hormones we had stuff like the FSH and the LH? Okay? Those would work by way of that fat soluble to come in and help these cells begin to develop to where we have a full follicle, okay, with a developed egg, all right, And then once it is fully ready, this follicle has to do a couple of other things, all right? Because it'll spit the egg out, hopefully make its way to the fallopian tube, and then if, you know, if sperm release and it begins to come up and fertilize, one of the things that has to happen, and this is going to look pretty bad for a uterus, okay, but y'all just bear with me, okay? Chemicals, i.e. the hormones, i.e. progesterone. These have told these to release progesterone, which will come in here and build up the lining of the uterus so the egg can implant. And therefore, if the egg is fertilized, we now have the environment in the uterus ready to harbor that egg and let it develop. And we end up getting the placenta and blah, blah, blah. And these are fat soluble. Yes, no, maybe.
So the hormones would told the DNA to start making function.
Okay, so let's blow up, okay, the cells that are here in this follicle, okay? Let's do like a picture in a textbook, and let's blow up that cell, okay, which will have its nucleus, which will have its DNA, and on that DNA are going to be my genes. And those could be genes for production of progesterone. So when my hormone from my endocrine system comes in, makes its way through, and targets one of these cells, my progesterone will get created, and I will now have that release and come down and work on the lining of my uterus. If the egg is not fertilized, it makes its way, and it goes, oh, it's not this time, you menstruate. And that lining sheds. That is way too much knowledge in my head for Thursday. But I love the question. Love it. Ask. Talk to me. Is that pretty good? Cool. So, these little transport proteins, their terms are globulins. Oh man, I just explained this. Okay? We got ahead of ourselves. Okay? Those little transport proteins are globulins. Okay? Different, I mean, and like I said, they'll be specific. All right? This is showing how we're going to have a protein, and then how it will either be a protein, not a protein, get to go through, not go through, where we'll get to go and act directly on a gene in the nucleus of the cell, which means we affect that protein that gets made, all right? Or it begins to create a series of reactions within this protein, which sets off the little G proteins, okay? They create activities within the cell and go and act on a protein and change the product that's outside the nucleus. Fat versus water. Woo! Nothing like hormone action at 10 o'clock in the morning. And remember, this is one of the two systems that control the body. our nervous and our